Welcome once again to The Sage. As usual, it's always a pleasure. The journey of The Sage has been one that has brought me great pleasure and I think many blessings from the many interactions we've had with you, our dear audience. So thank you once again for being with us as we again bring what we think is a very important episode to you. Many weeks ago, we spent several weeks discussing issues related to family farming, families doing something to put more food on their table. At this time in the history of our country, I really don't need to say what we are all facing. Our terrible journey at this time, at this point in our lives, where we're all facing hunger as never before, where we're witnessing unprecedented inflation in food and many other essentials in our lives. And I think the greatest tragedy is the fact that it continues. It's unabated. And perhaps the worst of it is in front of us because we're going through a peak period usually when it comes to food, the celebrities that are ahead of us, Christmas, New Year, when food prices are usually normally high. So we on The Sage, as we called on our government and our leaders to do the needful to address this terrible hunger that is there, decided also to rally our audience, rally our fellow citizens towards doing something no matter how small, to increase the food on the table for their families. And in line with that, we courageously went into the issue of farming, family farming, whether it's for vegetables, whether it's fish, and whether it was poultry. We found, talking to experts and bringing experts on set, that actually can be done on a small scale by every family, no matter how restricted you are in terms of space and accommodation. Whether you live in a flat or apartment, or whether you're lucky and you have a house to yourself, you can farm. You can farm all of these things, all of these necessities in small containers. Plenty of our staple vegetables in small containers. Surprisingly, quite a sizable quantity of fish in small containers. Poultry in small cages and so on, within your compound, within your living space, enough at least for you to put some food, some additional food on your family's table. It's been quite a joy. It's been quite a ride. We discussed extensively. And at this point, let me thank you, our dear audience, for the numerous feedback received. Your positive feedback always brings us joy. Your negative feedback is also as important. In fact, sometimes we take them more seriously. And this very program is born of our taking some negative feedback we got very seriously. We had some of our viewers complain that they did indeed venture into poultry farming, and some of them met hard luck on the way. Many of their chicks died, which is a tragedy. We thoroughly sympathize. And therefore we thought about it and decided that we needed to do this particular episode which would highlight more clearly and in greater depth the potential risks associated and what to do, more importantly, what to do about them. They are risks, they're not inevitable, they can be dealt with. And so I persuaded one of my experts, who I'm very, very proud to say is a C4C entrepreneur, to come back on set and to discuss with me, with you, those potential risks and what to do, not only to avoid them, but to ensure they never happen again. So please join me as I welcome Olakunle Paleye once again to the set.
Thank you for bringing us up again. It's a really pleasure to always be on stage, and also to educate and then to impart the populace out there. It's a really sense of joy.
Yes, and I believe you because I know you are very successful at it yourself. As we had discussed before, you yourself, you are the CEO of Oval Farms, and with a great deal of success and expert knowledge. And you also were trained in university on issues of animal farming. And so you address it with expertise and with passion. And in fact, I've tasted some of your chickens and I think they're great. So thank you for coming again to reveal your trade secrets as we discuss more in depth about potential risks and what our viewers need to do to make sure they mitigate all those risks. And so before we delve in, let me turn to the viewers and say we found some areas we think is of particular importance to discuss. And they include things like breeding, making sure you're breeding the right type of birds for your needs, for the family. Housing, how you house your birds. What should you do and what should you not do? Nutrition, how you feed your birds, your chickens. What should you feed them? How should you feed them? And so on and so forth. And we will also discuss disease prevention. So important. What should you be looking out for if they unfortunately do happen to have an infection of some sort? What you should immediately begin to do to deal with that. And then other things like lighting and temperature and so on, which you should also be aware of and take precautions so that your birds thrive. So, a lot of interesting things to discuss. Join us as I turn to Olakunle and say, let's begin from the beginning. Okay. And in my mind, I think the beginning is the birds you decide to choose, what breed. We discussed it before, but let's discuss this in more detail.
Okay, before I tend to the breeding, I want to recommend and appreciate each family out there for the bold steps that they take in order for them to have meat on their table, and the family poultry, to the families, the father there, the mother there, and the individuals that are there that you take it as a bold step to put into practice things that you've had, and then also to ensure that you have meat on your table. So it's a great thing that I need to recommend you for and appreciate you for. So, and then that is why we are here today to talk about some potential risks that you have to take note of. So, like Mommy have said, that the first one we talked about is the breeding. So, you have to just take the right breeds of pets. Like you said, what do you want to do for your family as a family? What do you want to go into? Do you want to just breed your birds for chicken? And then do you want to breed it for eggs? Like we dealt it so much in the first episode there that we talked about that if you are going for breeding for table eggs, that's layers birds. So you got the layers birds, and then at the maximum of 18 weeks, they start giving you the table eggs. Then if it's
what is table head?
table egg, just
Okay.
eggs that you buy at the
Oh,
market.
okay.
They are
Okay.
table eggs. So, we have fertile egg, we have table egg. Fertile egg is just eggs that have been fertilized and which either a male mount a female. So the egg that the female brings out is fertile egg. But individual perhaps your bed is a layers and then there is no male that have crossed it or that have made it. So the egg produced is table egg. So it's edible for eating. So that's what I mean by table eggs. So that's with layers. So when it comes to broilers also, so like you said, you have to decide are you going for meat or you are going for egg. If you are going for meat, you go for broilers beds, and if you are going for eggs, you go for layers beds. And then you have, like we said also in the first episode, that we have dual purpose eggs. That's either for meat or eggs together. So that's broilers beds, and then sasso beds. They are dual purpose funab alpha. They are dual purpose egg, and the beds they are either for meat or for eggs. And for eggs, so they can give you the eggs you wanted. They can give you the meat, which is very very edible and they're very interesting also. So when you talk about the breed also of the birds you are taking, you have to be very very sure of where you are sourcing the breed from. That's the points that you have to take notes. When you talk about okay, brooded birds, there are many out there. They can just tell you that this is brooded bird, this is brooded bird. Perhaps they haven't been medicated enough.
Let me stop you there and then add something and then you continue. So in summary, really what we said last time and what we're emphasizing this time is you need, as you decide to start your family poultry, your family breeding of birds, as the experts like to call the chickens, we know them as chickens. You need to understand, be clear in your mind, what is the goal? Is it because I want eggs on my table for my family, or is it because I want meat regularly for my family on the table? Because that determines the type of chicken you decide to start farming, growing. If it is for eggs, then those are layers. If it is for meat, primarily, those are the broilers. They mature at different times. Their breeding differs in many ways. But I think I can safely say, Olakunle, permit me to tell our audience that because for this show we're recommending family use, so small scale, we're not trying to turn you into commercial chicken rearers. We would suggest perhaps that largely you take what are called brooders rather than day-old chicks. Because day-old chicks require a great deal more expertise in terms of care. But as Olakule educated me even before we started recording, he said, even when you wisely decide on brooders, which are chicks that are 2 to 3 weeks old and have been steered through the critical period, you need to be very careful about the brooders you buy. Over to you.
So the goals of this stage and the family poultry is not for commercials. It's just for family individual to put eggs on your table and to have meat on your table too. So, and if you decided to go for broilers, so like we said, it is advisable for you to get a brooded beds. So, and these brooded beds ranges from 2 weeks to 3 weeks beds. And then there are many things you have to put in place. There are many morphological features and physiological features you have to consider that if you are to get these brooded beds. So like I've been rightly said, if you are going for brooded beds, you have to watch out for many things, because out there, because many vendors will want to just put off their beds, but maybe they don't have enough money to cater for the chickens again, and you just say, okay, this is 2 weeks old, this is 3 weeks old. No, it's not done that way. So you have to be very sure. First question you have to ask them that have they been vaccinated, the first dose and second dose of vaccination, because within that 2 weeks, each bears have already received vaccination. So and that will make you to be on the safer side. Number one, that you've got the potential risk of any kind of incidences of outbreak of disease, because your birds have been vaccinated. So then the next thing you have to ask is that when getting these brooded birds, just take note of their sizes and their behavioral change, their behavioral features, because they've already grown feathers. So because between day 0 to 2 weeks, there is a drastic change in their feathers, because at day 0 they do have baby feathers. So at 2 weeks they've already there is involvement of new feathers, because that one would have just worn out and the new one has come up. So they are all covered with a feathers that's very obvious to the eyes to see. And even those like the birds, the feathers start coming out from their anus too. That's when you be like, okay, wow, these birds are already 2 weeks old or 3 weeks old.
Okay, that's very important.
That's very,
So
very
you're
important.
telling us that within 2 to 3 weeks, the feathers are different,
The feathers
and
are very
everybody
different.
going there trying to buy brooders should be aware of that, so that if by you fall into the hand of a vendor who is not telling the whole truth, and you look at those feathers, you will know.
You can easily
Yeah.
depict that these birds, they are not up to 2 weeks. And then you can place an argument that, are you sure that these birds are up to 2 weeks? Because the feather you are seeing, it's not developed very well. So and then you can also see that at the comb of the birds, the comb, that's when it started coming up. It's just pale yellow like that. It started coming up. You can depict from that, because from day 0 to day 14, they develop there is a emergence of comb, and then their shank, which is the leg, they stand strong, that can carry the body weight. So they are very edible and standing strong, and they are also exacting birds, because you see them flapping their wings up and down, flowing up and down.
More mobile,
More mobile.
flapping their wings.
Flapping their wings.
Yeah.
So you should know that these birds have already undergone the process of brooding, and then there is no need for any intensive care anymore. But what I mean by intensive care, because the intensive care is being done during the brooding stages, where all the medications and vaccinations has been properly be given to the birds. So then once you watch out for all these features, you'll be able to say, oh, yes, I am getting a brooded bird that is well able to grow in any weather condition. Well, by any other, you getting that brooded bird doesn't mean that you will not have a semi-intensive care for them. So you are not to expose them to any harshly weather. No, like I said, you are taking them from one environment to the other. You get it out, you source your brooded bird from one environment, and you are bringing them to your own environment.
The vendor's environment is different,
from
the home environment you're bringing
them in. So which means that you have to first do acclimatations, not to just expose them to any harsh weather. Maybe during the day, yes, once the sun is high, can open anywhere, the windows and everywhere, for them to receive ventilations. But at the evening, you have to close everywhere because of cold. They still have to be taken care of semi-intensively, just a little. It doesn't require stress. Just like every morning, you open the tampon of your cage, then in the evening, you drop it down within the stage of 2 weeks to 4 weeks. So that's when the semi-intensive care has to be taken very seriously.
For our family breeders, this is good news. It's not too long. You've gotten your brooder that is presumably at least 2 weeks old.
2 weeks old.
And he's saying that for another 2 weeks, you still need to take a little bit more
You need to be care, and then to be also to be aware of the environment you are bringing them in, because perhaps maybe now we are in the Harmattan season now, where at the noonday like this, the weather is very hot. So this will be feeling the heat. So which means that you have to bring anything you use to cover the cage. Perhaps you are using a cage system. Anything you use to cover the side of the cage, you have to bring them off so that fresh air can just come in
Get to
and
the birds.
flow to the beds. Maybe it's a room that you are using, open the windows, the doors, so that they can receive fresh air, fresh ventilations. So then thereafter at evening, just make sure that you cover them up.
So
That's
that they
when
don't, the temperature drop
it
doesn't
doesn't affect them.
affect them.
And
Okay.
you're still kind of accustomed to that environment. But as you grow by, their environmental conditions different. It's always different. So, but at 4 weeks, you can decide to just open the cage throughout the night, perhaps not to close them again. But just make sure that when you're opening the cage or the tamponi, that is free from any forms of thefts. So
And if predators.
predators, right?
Okay.
So
So
it's
that's
free
a very
from-
important. So make sure that as you expose it and passers-by and rodents and so on pass by, it doesn't give the access.
So
Talk a bit more about protection.
That's when I will talk about the housing system. So after you sourcing out the brooded birds, so which form of housing system you should develop for them? So the place perhaps you are using a cage, the place you are placing your cage should be free from sun, from the direction of the sun, because they should not be directly facing towards the sun. It's very, very important aspect that you have to take note of.
Okay. The heat will be too much
The heat
during
will
the
be too
day
much
for
during the
long
day,
periods of
for
the
long
day.
periods. So make sure that you are placing your cage in a place that is not facing directly to the sun, and then also is well ventilated, that there is enough of breeze that can just blow through them, pass through the cage and come out through the cage. That's also the things that you have to consider in housing system. And also in housing system you have to consider your litter management too. The kind of how you manage your litters, their droppings, their stew, their poo. So you have to be taking care of it daily. Clean their stew daily, because birds are sometimes funny, can place their feeder and their waters and they just throw everything off, and they make everywhere to be messy. So which means that the following day you have to clean it up and put another bedding materials there, which is either sawdust or your whichever is. And also when you are doing your housing system, be it cage also, make sure that they have a place that a polyethylene bags or sacks are being knocked around the cage for you to cover them. So that
Cover what?
Cover the cage during the night, at night.
Okay.
And also that
As a protection?
As a protection. And you have to ensure that it's
Protection from?
from the harsh weather, from
Okay.
storms or winds or any cold weather, because if you cover them, at least that one can provide them a source of warmth a bit over the night, for them at least they are not easily affected or directly hit by winds or
Even after 4 weeks?
No, I mean between 2 weeks to
Okay.
4 weeks.
Okay.
That's when the semi-intensive care needs to be put in place. That's the essence of the trampoline. And also, if the sun is too much, perhaps you place it where the sun is directly hitting them. The trampoline can just cover the other side that the sun is directly hitting, while the other side are open for the air to come in to blow in. So you have to consider that also. Then you have to consider that the cage is having a source of light, because for them to heat over the night, perhaps you don't want to let them feed over the night, it's still okay. But the lighting must be very okay during the day, that is not dark and they can see what they are eating when it comes to housing system of brooded birds.
So how do you protect them?
Also,
what other?
Yes, and then in regards to that, also when you are creating your cage or building your caging system, you have to make sure that it's free from any forms of predators, be it rabbits, be it cats, be it human predators too, or snakes, so that they will not
I like
have
that.
access to your base. And over the night, you just come over in the following morning and then you see that, wow, everywhere as just, or you can even make the dead chickens, because the snake will just pierce it, strike it, and then that's all. Or the cats can just eat the intestine and leave the carcass for you alone. So when you are custodian cage, make sure that it is free from any forms of predators. and so that you not run into loss in order to while you are still trying to put meat or eggs on your table. So you have to be you have to put that into consideration very well. The housing system and the environmental system of where you are acclimatizing your pets to.
Okay, that's very interesting, and but ironically very important, because that means that perhaps you need to have a kind of a netting or something that cover the sides of the cage. You don't close them off entirely from air and light, but at the same time you keep animals crawling and all kinds of animals away from them, and even the big human animals, because one of the side effect or fallouts of the hardship and hunger that's in the country is the fact that even human beings can be predators. Thank you so much. But we're still, in my opinion, it's the tip of the iceberg. There's a great deal more to discuss when it comes to, disease prevention and treatment. What do you do? How do you feed them? What do you feed them with? Because these are critical to that success, to reducing risk. But we will leave that. We will delve into those topics next week. Be sure that you join us in the concluding episode of this special edition on risks, how to reduce the risks when it comes to your poultry farming to ensure that you do indeed achieve your objectives. Thank you once again to our experts. We greatly, greatly appreciate your candor and your sharing. And to our viewers, I say, don't miss next week's episode. Be with us, learn more. If you're embarking on this, have wisdom, have the right knowledge, and so listen to the episodes and to the advice from our experts. Thank you all. We shall see you next week.